are now.
Okay,
Is
good.
this recording or Facebook Live? I want to know.
It's a recording.
It's
Okay.
both.
So
Hello,
there is
Facebook
some
world.
possibility of editing.
Okay, good.
All right, well, welcome y'all. Glad that you could be here. We had a really good time with all these lovely folks with us from 6 to 7 with our students, and that went really well. And so just glad to hear kind of their stories and what God has been doing through iGo, and we'll have a little bit of that here as well, and then an opportunity to ask some questions. So before I kind of set up just the framework of what we're going to be doing for the next little bit, I just want everybody to go down. You can pass this microphone down and introduce yourself, what role you play with iGo, and then we also have a student in here with us tonight, so that would be great to hear, what she's doing too. All right, and so you need to say like what school you go to, what grade you're in, that kind of stuff.
Your activities.
What's your favorite color, all that kind of stuff.
Life goals.
Okay. That's a hard one. You're supposed to.
Oh.
We're passing it.
He said you can take the microphone and pass it down.
Oh.
I was gonna do that. Then we
Okay,
come back.
introduce
Then we come back and it'll be a natural.
Yeah. My name's Lance Shoemake. My friends call me Shoe. Patrick's being very formal, but we're gonna be good friends. So you can call me whatever you want, Lance, Shoe, either one. But I lead iGo mainly because I started it and got there first. And so we've been doing this thing called iGo Global this is our 21st year. So we've been doing it for a while, and we just like sleeping in bunk beds. So that's kind of why we do it when we're training students.
I'm Lee Gainey, and I first found out about iGo at Super Summer Camp and went as a student several years, and then came on staff out of college, and they can't get rid of me. So I've served in several different roles on staff, but mainly in the role of what we call a trip coach. And so I do a lot of the coordination of specific trips, specific teams, handling the logistics, the administrative side of that, and communicating with parents and churches and students, as well as the missionaries on the field to plan the trips.
I'm Shelby. I'm 18. I'm a senior at Rockwell High School. Is that it?
Cross country.
I run. I do. I
Your
run.
favorite candle scent?
There's so many. Like that really was a
Oh,
good
but you can't
question.
smell.
No, I can smell candles. It's really weird. I have you know how some people have selective hearing? I have selective smelling.
All teenagers.
Lucky
have like
I'm Brad Cardwell, and I've been with iGo for 20 years or so. About that time, I was a youth pastor, and Lance was looking for some help with iGo and getting it off the ground. He took me to lunch and made me an offer, slid a piece of paper across the table, and offered me no money, free T-shirts and stickers. So,
Well, don't tell them about
and
the
sleep in
shirts.
bunk beds all summer training kids. So that's how we got started.
All right, long journey back here. I just wanted to kind of start off our night with a few questions, kind of some big picture type questions for us to kind of get us started. And as they're talking, you can kind of be thinking through some questions that you may have. You may have already come in here with plenty of questions, but we might answer a couple kind of right off the bat. But particularly, I wanted to mention that we will talk about COVID tonight, and kind of, I know the question I've been getting from many parents has been, is there a requirement for vaccines, or what would happen if we sign up and then there's a requirement for vaccines later? We've gotten that, so just know we're going to talk about that. So if your brain is just so fixated on that you can't think of any other questions, start thinking about something else you could ask, because we're going to talk about it. And then if we still don't answer your question, you can ask about it. I want to go ahead, and sorry I didn't give this to you already. We have a brochure. If you haven't already seen this before, Rose, help me pass it out. That also gives some information that you can kind of be looking at that might answer a question for you even as you're sitting here listening. But what I want to start out with tonight is just what's the overall vision for iGo Global, and how did you kind of get to a place where you specifically wanted to send students on these trips? whoever wants to answer.
Brad, you want this? Or you want to do the?
Go ahead.
Okay. The overall vision is the Great Commission, which sounds very easy to say, because it's the mission of the church, right? To go and make disciples of all the nations is what we are called and commanded to do by Jesus. For us, that may be the overall vision, but we're focused specifically on Great Commission completion type work, which means that we focus on unreached, least reached peoples, for the people that have little or no access to the gospel. And so wherever our teams go, whether it's New York or Houston, we're mainly working with those kinds of people groups. And if we go overseas, Japan, Germany, those kinds of places, we're still focusing on people groups with little or no access to the gospel, so that that's where we kind of feel like God has led us in this Great Commission work. And then the real part that I think makes the most sense to you guys, or maybe it's the most important thing for you guys to hear, is that our job in this whole thing is training. We're a training organization that trains students how to engage on the mission field cross-culturally effectively, but also how to live on mission. And so that's why we partner with churches, come alongside churches. We tell people all the time we're a sending organization, but we're really not. That's really not our job. Our job's not sending. The church sends people to the mission field. They partner with iGo to train those students so that they do it really well, to connect them with missionaries who love working with students and actually will let students do the work that God's called them to do. And so that's kind of the big picture of what we do. We train these students from the time they sign up. We start training them, and then we bring them in for a couple of days before we send them to New York, and we train them on how they're going to do that across cultures and safety and all that kind of stuff, and then train them throughout the trip as well, so that they see it more as a new path for their life, to live on mission, to live to make Jesus famous, no matter what they're doing, where they're going. So
I'll add too. I need to get the mic or no?
Go ahead.
Give them
Yeah, 'cause he wants-
Oh, the recording, yep. Facebook Live.
Well, 20-something years ago when I was a youth pastor, this didn't dawn on me until students actually went for my youth group. So they're kind of the ones that taught me and gave me this vision, because they were spending some of the days of their summer overseas in other countries. And I was still of the mindset that God had called me here, and I was to invest here in this youth group, in this city, in this town, and that God is calling some to go and invest there. And Acts 1:8 crystallized for me as I was watching my students come back, and those were the students that were the most engaged in here, is because they'd been there and seeing what God had done and had His vision for His name and His glory for all peoples. And so when those students came back, Acts 1:8 crystallized for me when Jesus says, "You will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the uttermost parts." And it's both and. It doesn't have to be, and it's not supposed to be, that we are called here and we don't have a heart and a vision for what God is doing all over the planet. Give, go, pray. And so kind of our heart for what these students are, they're going to become the adults that God wants them to be, and you and I want them to be when they have His vision for the world. And we have students that are now in their 30s, and they may not be overseas, many of them are, but they may be teaching in public school, they may be stay-at-home moms, wherever they're working. They still have that heart for the nations. They're still praying and giving and calling people around them to adopt God's vision and His heart for His name to be known by all peoples.
All right, I'm going to ask Jamie Lee this one. Jamie Lee is our trip coach, and that's kind of she's the primary person we'll be talking to and communicating with in preparation for this trip. You know, I've kind of touched on training students, getting them prepared. I'll kind of talk about something a bit more specific with that, particularly something that that y'all call base camp. That's the first couple of days prior to actually going to New York. What do you do to prepare students? What does that look like? And just how do you partner even with parents in that process?
Yeah, so like Shu said, training is what we do, and it's what we're passionate about and ready to get back to doing. And that COVID has kind of slowed down, but we do sometimes it's a half day. We did a lot of half day trainings last summer because things were abbreviated, but usually it's a 1 to 2 day intensive training time for our teams that go no matter where they go. And it's kind of a combination of experiential simulation type training where we put them in situations.
Sorry, I couldn't find simulation in your music.
Sorry, Siri. Where we put them in situations that are applicable no matter what culture they're crossing, just general cross-cultural training, how to do that. We put them in, we basically create a fake country that they go through and learn how to navigate crossing cultures in different ways. We also do a theology of missions and just, core values that are straight from Scripture about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And those, as a student, when I went through training, those were very pivotal to me. I wouldn't say that I'd never heard those truths before, because I think, if a church is teaching the Bible, they're teaching these truths. But students are in a very unique posture at a base camp to listen a little bit more because of what they're about to do. Most students are a little nervous about what they're doing. They're about to step into something that they've never done before, and that was the case for me. That's why I don't think it was necessarily something new I was hearing, but I was tuned into it in a different way because there was an urgency to needing to listen to what was being said because I was about to go into this foreign context that I'd never been in before. And so we've just really seen God use this training and this teaching in a unique way in students because they're in that position to hear something that the Lord maybe solidifies it in a different way, and just kind of comes alongside the church in that and reinforces truths that they have heard from the church and just puts it in that context. So in addition to that, we do some team building activities and games and just helping the team as a whole kind of merge together. At the start of training, we do a parent meeting where we have the students and parents together, and we do a little bit of, usually Shu or Brad leads that and kind of speaks to both students and parents. Then usually the students leave the room to go begin training, and I think that I'm used to Brad usually doing it, but Brad always has some very encouraging words for parents at that point, and just kind of talking about just encouraging you for what your student's about to do, knowing that there's a lot of emotions in that moment of sending your student, away from you if you're not going on the trip. And during that time, we usually allow parents a chance to write notes to the student that we'll give them later on, like once they're on the trip, an encouraging note so that they can have another just word of encouragement from you as parents once they're on the plane or already, in New York. So, and then we go on and complete base camp from there. So it's a very crucial time. We usually have parents say goodbye at the beginning of that time of training just to help students stay focused. In our trip dates, the first part of those trip dates are base camp. And so we really want students to see their trips starting at base camp so that they say goodbye and then really focus in on what they're doing. And we've heard from our missionaries that they see a huge difference in our teams once they get to the field because they're ready. They aren't dealing with emotions that were said right before that at the airport. They have been in this mode of training and preparing, and they hit the ground running because of the training leading up to the time of the trip. So.
I don't know if this would stick with you, Jamie Lee, or whoever answers this, but how would, when I have gone through your website and looked at kind of things that you prioritized and sending students out, I did notice there being a priority for keeping kids safe. And so I do want to ask that question is, what do you do to prioritize safety when kids are going, to these places like New York City?
Anybody, Brad?
Yeah. There's twofold answer to that question in that everybody that we work with, all the missionaries that you'll be working with are IMB missionaries. And so they're not going to allow any team to come in that they are going to be put in any sort of position that's not going to be wise. The other side, the other answer to that is safety being a myth. One of the things that we do when we have this parent meeting is we pray for the students, and the parents pray for the students, and then we'll always have the students turn around and pray for their parents, because their parents are going to have to get on Texas highways and drive home. And it just kind of dawns on everybody in that moment that, when are you safe? So you can know that the IMB, International Mission Board, is would not allow a team to come, or would not put a team in any sort of jeopardy. We've never had that necessarily happen to any of our teams, but we would call and it'd give us updates if there had been some sort of attack in that town or that city. They would inform us and tell us that we're not even going to be in that part of the city. We don't go to that part of the city, and here's why. And so they inform us as to, and Lance knows a little bit more, and Jamie knows a little bit more about Astoria, a really neat part of New York. But we would be completely informed and keep you informed as to anything going on the ground.
And we have had some locations. Years ago, I was coordinating a team to a place in the Middle East, I believe. I can't even remember where now, but a few weeks before there was some unrest in that area, and the missionary called us and he said, we don't need your team to come here. And so we had to reroute them and change plans then. So that is utmost priority to the missionaries on the field. And then just from like the logistical side of how we plan things, there is a system in place with the adults that are on the team. With this summer we're going to have interns that we call a field leadership team in New York. So students that are a little bit more experienced that will go to New York before your team gets there, that will really become extensions of the missionaries, learn the area, learn the ministry, and they will go out with your team, with your adults, and kind of lead in that way. And there are systems in place for, even like in New York, there's not a need to get on the subway because of where you're all in walking distance. But I guess on your free day, you might get on the subway to go, more into the city for tourism type places. But there's even a system in place for if someone if like half the team gets on the train and the other team doesn't, like, what do you do? Or how do you get to the next place? Or just there's protocols in place, and that's clearly explained to the teams to know if you do happen to get separated, what do you do? And so they're explained, equipped for that and trained in that ahead of time.
We have all kinds of scenarios that we can play out in our training, because most of them have happened at some point and we've learned from it, and so we have all these systems in place. The other thing, everything that they said was great. I would just say your student will never be alone. Like, they will be with an adult. Even if this is a group of 20 or 25, we'll break them into smaller groups during the day, but there'll be an adult and a leader with every group all the time. And so we're not going to send out one student, hey, why don't you go over there and knock on that door and see what happens? Like, we'll be on the news. So they'll be in groups, they'll be supervised, they'll be trained, they'll know exactly how to do that. We're going to make sure that as far as it's up to us, that we're going to keep them as safe throughout the whole experience.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask this last question and then start to turn it over to y'all to ask your own questions about everything. And so I mentioned when it relates to COVID and everything kind of going on, we were talking about this with our students just a while ago, that we show a lot of grace with what we don't know, because there's just a lot of things that change. There's a lot of things that's changed since start of this year, in the last couple years, and so we don't have all the answers for what things might look like next summer, but just kind of give us where you're at now, or what you're understanding things to be right now regarding basically vaccine mandates and things like that, because that's the kind of questions we've gotten, and particularly if a student signed up and they were not comfortable getting the vaccine, and then and then something were to change, say there's not a vaccine requirement right now, and then something changes along the line, what would you do in such a case? That's kind of just where you're at with all that.
Shelby? obviously we don't know all the answers to that. We can just tell you what we've been experiencing the last 2 years and how we've been watching this and monitoring it. And like you said, there's no vaccine requirement to go to New York right now. Who knows how many times that'll change or what'll change between now and then. Just, we have a guy on the ground who's a missionary. He lives there. He knows exactly what's going on, and we're talking to him all the time. The advantage that I think we have here is that we're not just having a bunch of different students from a bunch of different places that we have to communicate with. We have Patrick, and what we'll do is, as we're monitoring and things change, we're going to inform Patrick and we're going to make decisions together. And so that scenario where all of a sudden New York says anybody that comes to New York has to get a vaccination. Let's play that fun little story out. We would say, okay, here's the deal, and Patrick can then talk to leaders here, and we can talk kind of together in that process. And I think it would be a matter of like, do you still want to do this? Do you want to let students get out and we refund their money, or do you want to still do this and see what happens, or do you want to move locations? And that would always be an option. And I talked to Patrick about this on the phone a couple weeks ago. Like, we're pretty confident Houston's not going to do vaccine requirements, and so we have a great partner in Houston, and any team that ends up being canceled or having to change because of that, we pretty much have an ability to put people in Houston last minute and do a lot of different things. But our goal would not be to make a last minute decision. It'd be to see this in February, see this in March, and go, yeah, here's what it's looking like, here's where it's going. Brandon's going to be telling us. Brandon's the guy on the ground in New York. He's going to be telling us, yeah, it's looking like they're going to do this. Or sometimes he'll tell us what you're seeing, and missionaries do this all the time with us. They say, what you're seeing on the news is not what it's really like here. And we're going to trust them because they live there on the ground, and they see it. So it's just going to be a communication process, and that's the advantage we have working with a church where all of you guys are coming from the same church. And you guys will be going with our church, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so our church youth group will be on the same week that you guys are. So there'll be lots of communication with our parents as well. And so we're just going to watch it and do what we can. And if it's like, we're never going to, iGo Global, I can tell you this. iGo Global will never require vaccines. Like, that's not our goal, that's not our job. We're just going to communicate, and we've been told by some of our overseas missionaries that they expect vaccine requirements to be in place for their trips. We're already in the process of asking students that are going to Honduras and Germany and places like that, if they're not comfortable with it, if we can start the process of moving them to a different place. And that would be our goal and our ideal is, like, if you're not comfortable moving forward, let's move you to a place where everybody can still serve and figure out how that works.
All right.
That's about the best answer I can give on that. Nobody knows, only the Lord.
All right, thanks. So I'm going to turn it over to y'all to ask your questions. Again, since we're recording this, as someone asks a question, please just repeat what their question is so that whoever ends up watching this later can hear it. I'm going to leave it with y'all for the most part. You don't got to give it back to me after every question. Just kind of decide yourselves who wants to answer that one. But let's go ahead and get started with the first one. So somebody just pop your hand up real quick. All right.
So I was wondering, you said there would be an option for the student to withdraw if they weren't comfortable with either a reassigned location or a vaccine mandate or whatever. So that kind of led me to ask, is there a minimum number of students that are required to make the trip?
Okay, so she just asked if there's a minimum number of students required to make the trip for if something were to happen with COVID or people dropped out because of, what's going on. So
No. No, there's not a minimum. I mean, we've got another group that may be similar in size to what y'all are anticipating that's going that week, and there's no mandatory number. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. I think it would be kind of y'all's decision too. Like, if it ends up being Patrick and a high school girl, that's probably not gonna work. So we'll change the game. But then we have this other church that's going, and so there's opportunity. So yeah, because it's not an international location, it's a little bit easier with a smaller group. So, yes.
So you mentioned a base camp. Is that in Rowlett? So we would take them to Rowlett and then they go on to New York? They get training, or I'm assuming.
Yeah, our training is usually at a camp, like a youth camp facility, and it'll either be in Lavon or Denton area. And yes, so typically, like with a church, like they may load up in the van and bring them, and so but you guys would be welcome to come bring them yourself, come to that parent meeting, all those different kinds of things. We'll communicate all the details as we get there, but it's in Texas. It's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, what does that training just kind of look like?
So I didn't repeat the other question, did I? I'm so man. Sorry, Facebook Live. So the question is about base camp and where that is. It's in Texas. It's a camp facility. You can bring them and drop them off. So the next question is, what does that training look like? And it is about half experiential training, to where we've created a fake country and we're going to put them through a fake country so they experience like what it feels like to cross cultures. We're iGo Global, so our fake country is called iGosia, and so they have to go through our airport, they have to go through our customs, they have to go through our passport control, they have to use our currency. It's kind of an international type of experience. Even if they're going to New York, there's so much international that training will build them for. And then we kind of stop the experiential stuff and we really just start teaching and training. And so it's a lot of biblical basis for missions. Here's what the Bible says. Here's what God says about missions. Here's why you're doing this. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And so it's building on the simulation, some of the cross-cultural stuff by giving them strategies, but also informing them from the Bible. Here's what God says we should be thinking about when we're thinking about engaging his mission. And then we focus a lot of our time on what is the gospel and how do you share it. And we want students to know that in any context. When they get to New York, Brandon will teach them how to share it in their context. If they went to Japan.
What does that mean?
Well, like in the culture of New York, how they're going to be talking to people from North Africa or the Middle East. So how would a person from there most receive the gospel? You know, what's an approach that you can take with them, which would be different than somebody in Mount Pleasant, than somebody in Rockwall, or somebody in Japan. And so we let our missionaries kind of tell them, here's how you take the gospel and share it in the context that we live in, the culture we live in. So our job, we feel like, is to make sure they know the gospel. What really is the gospel? And so we're going to teach them that a lot. And then I think Jamie Lee said earlier, we're going to also do a lot of team building things at base camp so that they do that. So that's a 2-day, it's like a fast-paced, intense training, but we have their attention because they're about to get on a plane and go do something crazy. And so we can kind of fire hydrant the approach to learning, and then all throughout the week we keep referring back to those things that we trained them on and what we taught them on, so that it's begin, oh yeah, I learned that. Joy of the sower, about how important it is to sow seeds of the gospel. And now I'm seeing it. Now I'm really experiencing it. And so it drives it home. And so it's kind of, the two things work together really well. Does that help you? Okay. Next question.
So when you talk about cultural context, are you also informing students about what behaviors or gestures or anything like that would be offensive to other? Okay.
Yeah, the question's like, how do we help them with cultural context, with just how different cultures do things, gestures, things that they say, all those, dress code, all those kinds of things are a big part of that. So.
Yeah, and Shelby might even can speak to this some, because Brandon covers a lot of that in your daily training, right? Like just things that, just even like interactions between men and women and how to, engage same gender and stuff like that. But we do have a different dress code that is very conservative, that our students follow. And we explain, like whenever we send that out with the packing list and stuff, that it comes from the missionary. And I think y'all even, was it your team that had a lady said to y'all at some point, thank you for how you dress, because we appreciate it, and we are more willing to be around you because of the conservative way that we kind of require our students to dress. So
You mentioned the training, and then they'll fly to New York after the training. What does that look like in the week that they're going? Like you've got from July 2nd to 9th. What does the week look like in a whole with the timeline?
Yeah.
Okay, so the question was what the schedule and timeline of the week looks like after training and once they get to New York. So they will arrive on Monday in New York and go ahead and start training with Brandon, the missionary, that day. And go ahead and go out to the areas in Astoria where they will be doing ministry to become acquainted with the area. Brandon has a type of scavenger hunt type kind of way to engage the culture, things to do, things to try to eat in different restaurants and things. So they hit the ground running and start learning the area on day one. Then let me say this kind of as a sidebar before I get more into the schedule. As a trip coach who's done this for almost 13 years, this is logistically, it's been my favorite place to coordinate because of just the way everything is arranged. The lodging, so the place where they're staying is the New York School of Urban Ministry, and this organization was started to house church groups that come in to minister to the area. So that's what this lodging place is designed for. They send vans to go pick our teams up at the airport and bring them back to the place of lodging. They do an orientation for lodging there, just about their facilities and different rules. Like they don't allow girls and guys to be on the same floors where they sleep. There's common areas, but they feed breakfast to the teams every day. So the teams it's the same breakfast, I think, every day, and they may get tired of it, but it's okay. It's just a week. So they feed breakfast, and then the ministry sites are all within walking distance from that area. So that, cuts down on costs, and just a lot of the things we have to try to navigate with train systems or subway systems, we don't have to do that because it's all within walking distance. So Brandon will actually come to the place of lodging, to NYSUM, to do training after breakfast. Let me back up. Before he comes to do training, the team will be reading through the book of Acts through the course of the week. And that's what most of our teams do. Now, obviously, if Patrick wants to choose something different for them to read, that's fine. But most of our teams will read through the book of Acts, and they'll spend 30 to 60 minutes reading through Acts every morning, just kind of as their personal devotion time. A lot of our groups, I think y'all's group would come together at the end of that time and talk about what the Lord was showing them through reading about the early church and just the early missional efforts of the church. And then Brandon comes and does the specific cultural training for that area of Astoria, for those people groups in that area, and then sends everyone out to lunch. And one thing that's really neat is he encourages that each of the smaller groups, like Shu talked about, we'll break them into smaller groups because a lot of the international restaurants where they're going are smaller, and so it's hard for a whole team to go into them. So they'll be broken into smaller groups, and you'll be encouraged to go into some of the same restaurants over and over again to build relationships with the restaurant owners and the workers there. And I think y'all have some cool stories of just building relationships with people and sharing the gospel with those people and just supporting their businesses and just being consistent and faithful to return to those areas. So that's kind of how they start their ministry for the day, is at lunch, and then they go out to the different ministry sites around, just specific areas where Brandon has mapped for them to go and engage people. And then they come back to, they'll eat dinner in the area, come back to NYSUM, their place of lodging, in the evenings, and usually do a team debriefing or talking about the day, and then get some rest. So what would you add about that? Talk a little bit about that ministry time and what that looked like.
In the morning?
No, in the afternoon.
Okay. So basically with our group, so we were the first group to go, right? So we were kind of the guinea pigs. So we would kind of be the ones hey, this is a good idea. Hey, this you might not want to do. And in the afternoons we would start with lunch, and then, so like Jimmy was saying, we all go to different places, and the food is really good. It's really good.
Says the picky eater.
I'm so picky. I really am. But the food is really good. I really liked it. And so after that, we would go out and just kind of walk around. And so like Brandon gives you like a scavenger hunt, and it's like, go find somebody in a store and ask them this question. Like, it's the most random thing. Or it's like go into a henna store and get a henna, like stuff like that. Because a bunch of our girls would go like get a manicure or go get henna done. Like, you're sitting there for an hour, like this person is stuck with you, like they've got nowhere to go. And so we do that, and at one point, like we kind of accidentally all ended up at the exact same place, but it's kind of like a good minute to just like kind of talk with each other, like, how's your day been going? Or, hey, we hit this place, you might want to go over there too and see if there's anybody new out there that you could go talk to. And so the first day, I'm not gonna lie, like it's long, like it's gonna be a long day, and you're gonna be tired and ready for bed when you get back. But it's just kind of a really sweet time once you get back in the evenings, just kind of talk about how your day went. And some people will have conversations, like really great conversations with people, and others won't. But it's okay, like you're there for a week, and there will be days some people have a conversation, you're like, I walked around all day and I didn't have anything. Like, I ate good food, that was it. But that's okay. iGo trains you really well. Brandon is a fantastic person to just kind of hook you up with where to go. He'll give you suggestions so you're not wandering endlessly, and he'll tell you where the good food is too. So yeah, we really do have a good time, and we're all good at working well together and communicating with one another. Like, hey, I talked to this person today, I need to meet back up with them again tomorrow. Can somebody move to my group so that this group isn't like one person, it's now got whatever, 2 or 3 people. So communication is key, but it's pretty easy once you're all together. After you're together for a week, team dynamics and communication comes easy. So
yeah, and I think several of our teams had opportunities to meet back up with people again, always in a group setting, obviously. And one of our adult chaperones on this team got invited into a lady's house, and she took a couple of students with her, so I think there were 4 of them that went in. And while our adult was sharing the gospel, doing a Bible study with this mom, the students on the team were playing with her children and, telling her autistic son about Jesus, and, just really sweet time. And I think they were there for a couple of hours, right? Just really seeing the doors that the Lord opens up. We talk a lot at base camp about prayer walking and how prayer is the work. And so even if you spend the majority of your afternoon praying or seeing a teammate having a conversation and lifting up that specific conversation, like, that is part of the work, and that is a huge part of what they're going to do. This question wasn't asked, but I want to share about it. Brandon, the missionary, sees our teams that come in as being a part of his work, specifically through a word he calls sifting. And so we've used this language of like a farming language with our teams for several years of, we're going to plow the ground through prayer. We're hoping to sow seeds of the gospel, and, obviously hoping that others will come along and water that, and that there will be a harvest and that fruit will be born. But sifting is kind of the first step that Brandon sees with our teams. He's only one person. If you count his family, there's 4 of them. They can only cover so much ground. They can only go out and meet so many people. But when our teams come in, even a team of 10, of 20, however many are there, they're able to cover so much more ground and meet so many more people to then connect back to Brandon, to find the people who are responsive to the gospel, who are good soil, who want to hear more, who want to meet for Bible study, and connect those people back to Brandon. So our teams really are a crucial part of his work. And that's why after these 3 teams came this last summer, he was like, yes, he approved 6 different weeks that we can send teams in 2022, because it's such a crucial work of connecting those people back to him who are ready to hear the gospel.
That's a good question. We all have something to say. There's a tricky thing with taking students overseas. And the first trick is like, how do we actually help the guy on the ground? And so Jamie was just talking about that. They really see our teams as a help. And the second thing is, how do we get these students to do something meaningful while they're there? And if you find the right guy on the ground, that makes that a lot easier. But for us, we want our students to understand that missions is their life. And so when you're getting your nails done, I've never done that. I've been told like you get a chance to talk to this person and you can turn that conversation to the gospel. And sometimes you got to take students out of their context, put them in a foreign context, a strange context, so that they learn that they can do those things. But we want them to know, here's how you follow God every day and you look through His eyes to see the whole world as a mission field. So our teams aren't doing a whole lot of activities that you might think of as mission activities. You know, they're like building stuff and painting stuff, because our goal is like, hey, every day you get up, listen to God's voice, follow the Holy Spirit, and see where He's leading you and see what kind of conversations He's going to give you. And so sometimes He doesn't give some of our students a conversation that day, but He's giving our team the opportunity to meet people and connect it back to that work that Brandon's doing, so that it's long term. You know, like it really continues on through there. And so that over 20 something years, we found some guys on the ground that really get that, and we want to send teams to them because it just makes it so much easier. And our students come home, they're like, oh, this is what it looks like to live on mission. And sometimes it is just a normal day, and that's okay. Like most of our days are pretty normal, and we can live on mission in all of those. So hope that makes sense a little bit. So yeah.
I have kind of a weird question. You may
Great.
have already answered it, or it might be in the brochure. When they're done in New York, will they fly home? Like, I guess to Dallas.
Yeah, the question is, how do we get these kids out of New York at the end? What happens to them? So yeah, they'll fly back to Dallas and you'll pick them up. There's no training on the end of it. No other kind of extra base camp. It's like however you are going to get home is how you are going to get home. So it's always a fun thing to go to the airport and see them come in and make signs and stuff like that. But you can do that here too. So yeah.
Have y'all had any?
You go.
Okay. Have y'all had any kind of trafficking, like human trafficking type of threats or anything like that? Have you had to face any of that?
The question is, have we encountered any human trafficking threats? And we haven't. And our teams, it's part of the working with the right guys that are going to keep our teams in the right places. We've never encountered that. I mean, we've had, not like we ain't had weird stuff happen on the field, but it's never anything like that. Because our missionaries are just really familiar with the area and keep our kids safe. This New York thing, you have a whole place that's designed to host teams from churches that are coming in, so we're not putting them in a random hostel or a random hotel. We're putting them in a place that's really, really geared for that, which makes it easier. So yeah, it's a great question, but we've never faced anything like that.
Much louder. What does the free day look like?
Question is, what does the free day look like?
Shelby could probably give recommendations for this. Usually we give total freedom to the group leader. So Patrick will talk to the group and determine it's a real fun. My husband was in this role with their group and he's like, everybody wants to do something different. But you just kind of decide as a group, or if you need to split up into 2 or 3 groups and, hit kind of the highlights of what you can cover in a day in New York. But it's pretty much open. I mean, it's up to the team, the adult chaperones, if you want to split up.
Some of the options that you've seen them do.
Okay, so we got up pretty early that morning because we didn't have a big group, but we had a big enough group to where everybody wanted to do 50 different things. So we got up early that morning, and then we actually decided to take the subway. That's what it is, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. We decided to take the subway into New York City, and so we started in Times Square, and then we went to. It was really hot this day. I remember because some people wanted to go to this Museum of Natural History, and other people wanted to go to Central Park, I went to the place with air conditioning. But we did break up that day. Like, it wasn't necessarily ideal for us because we're just such a close group. Like, we didn't really want to split up, but if you have a bunch of different places to go, that's probably what you do. But we went to the Museum of Natural History, went to Central Park, met back up, went to, I don't know where else. We went to a lot of places that day. We really did. We went to a lot of places. And then we got back not super late that night, but later than normal, like on a normal missions night, and had dinner and just kind of hung out for the rest of the night. But it's really fun. Most of the time we were just in like the main, like New York City area, right around that. That's most likely where everybody will want to go, just because that's where everything is. We went to lots of like souvenir shops, so people could get sweatshirts or keychains, all the things. I got lots of stuff. But yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And one thing, we have talked about free day being half a day on Friday so that they can get a little more ministry done on Friday. And then usually our flights home on Saturday evening are late. Like, you won't leave the city until like 6 p.m. or so. And so getting back to Texas around 9, that tends to be a good priced flight for us. So their team actually went to the 9/11 memorial that Saturday morning. They had time to do that before they went to the airport. So it may work out where you kind of spend half a day on Friday, half a day on Saturday, splitting up your free day. But that will all be determined by your group leader and kind of what the students want to do and vote for.
Do you have any questions over here in particular?
I have something I want to say. No
What?
question.
I don't know about this. Is this on the
Don't,
script?
no microphone.
I just wanted to tell you all that these are my friends. Lance and I have been friends for 15.
17 days.
17. And Jamie Lee and I have been friends for 10 years. She's one of my people that I call when bad days, and she's truly one of my inner circle people. So as a mama, you can trust these people. And Lance and I sat in many golf carts and talked about the dream of this coming to our church. And Michael and I have prayed for about 10 years. Every Wednesday I pray for iGo. We also, for about the past 5 or 6 years, we contribute a monthly part of to iGo. I mean, we believe in this enough that we give our money to it. And so I just wanted to say that as a mama, I know it's hard.
That's why Lance is rolling in that new car.
I know.
I just want to clarify that Jen and I don't play golf.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. We go to Super Summer. I've never played golf. Yeah, we sit in our golf cart at Super Summer. But anyway, I just wanted to help you out and know that those are people that we love and trust.
Good. Thank you.
We are running, if that clock is right, I think we're running out of time. Does anybody have anything that they are just dying to get out? You want to ask?
Shelby?
I'll ask something real quick. Just logistically, which some of this is on your brochure and what kind of the process is when you apply. If you apply for your student, or really you're getting your student to apply, you might have to sit them down and say, do this, all right, and fill it out. They'll have to fill out, I've done it myself as far as their testimony and just kind of things that, you could speak on those questions if they, they start reading a question, they go, oh, they're going to count me out or something like that if I answer something. I don't know. But what's kind of, first of all, that sign up is, you can find it on our student page. We have it at fbcmp.org/students, and you can just go there to get signed up or to apply, really. But what's the, application process a bit, and then what gets set up when they apply, and how are they getting that stuff fed to them to get prepared to go?
You know that's her.
I don't have to repeat that one because you have the microphone. So yeah, you get it online, and we've tried to keep that short, students. So you answer some questions. We want to get to know you a little bit, but just so that you know, like we rely heavily on Patrick's recommendation of the students. Like Patrick knows y'all, adults and students alike, and so we rely heavily on his recommendation. Once we get your application and everything, looks good, we will, you'll get a text from me that says you're accepted, and in that, it'll have a couple of things that you need to do, but,
You throw confetti or something.
oh yeah, we can do congratulations, yeah. It'll throw confetti, and then it will have a link to a GroupMe text message, and that's where I will communicate with the students primarily. Parents are welcome to get in that GroupMe. Patrick is already in it, and that's kind of where I send updates. I can also send emails to parents if your student puts your email address in the field for the parent email address. A lot of students don't include that, but when they do, I will email the parents. But usually what I do is I'll email the parents and say, here's the link to the GroupMe so that you have that as well, and you can join that as well. And then that's where we send updates. There is a new kind of system that we are currently getting set up where your student will have an online account. So they'll enter basic information. They'll be able to see how much the trip costs, the dates, when things are due, passport copies, or y'all don't need passports, sorry, that totally doesn't matter, but like release forms, or for 18 and older, like background check forms, just basic paperwork stuff, medical release information, stuff like that. Any announcements, we will also have a document on there that updates about the current COVID state of affairs and if anything's changing with that, or just kind of keeping you informed and in the loop. As money is being sent in, you will see how much your student has fundraised, how much is left, the payment deadlines, and of course Patrick will be talking to y'all about that and kind of streamlining y'all's process for sending that in. But it's just going to kind of be an online account that you can access and see all your student stuff as well as everything that's due. But we'll be working with Patrick about that, and just kind of streamlining that process.
Those donations will be able to go through there.
Yes.
Yeah.
If Patrick wants them to.
Yeah, so we've got our cake auction coming up December 5th. So that's going to be a good way to kind of get fundraising applied towards your student's trip. And so that'll be one that we should be able to go in, and once we get funds from that fundraiser to be able to go and apply that to each individual person's trip, to make basically a fundraising donation to their, and that's kind of, I think I've heard you say that you do kind of like links that you can give people that they can go directly donate to their trip, you know, and so that's kind of, so I got a yes affirmative on that. So you'll just be able to have people that can help as a fundraiser, if there's anybody who wants to donate to that, and then we'll also be able to use that as well to be able to put that towards their trip, and you can just see all of that pretty easily, what's going on. And so if you want to go ahead and pay for it all, you can, but you might want to wait for us to get that fundraiser taken care of so we can help you out first, okay? All right, well, it is 8:05 or 6. I want to thank all of y'all for coming all this way over here to spend time with us and just to answer questions from our parents. I know we really appreciate you being here. I appreciate all of you parents that are in here just listening in and asking questions and just being invested in what God's doing in the life of your kids, and that's really cool. And so I just want to give all of them a round of applause really quick for being here. All right, I'm going to pray.
Don't forget about Facebook Live.
Yeah, and thank you all who will watch this in the future. And yeah, any questions that you'll have, always feel free to text me, call me, email me as we go along. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we can get on out of here. God, I thank you so much for this evening. I just thank you for what you're doing and preparing us for this trip and partnering with iGo Global, God. I just thank you for all that you've done in the many years leading us to where we are now. And just kind of experiencing, the fruits of all that they've learned and done up until this point, and to get to be a process of that. So God, I just pray that you would be working in hearts of those in this room and those that have heard everything we've talked about tonight, those that aren't still in here anymore, those that will hear this later on. God, I just pray that you would help us to, when you call us to do something, when you call us out on your mission of sharing the gospel, Father, I pray that we would be willing to say yes to that. I pray our students, God, would be confident in who you are, that they would get a sense that you are calling them and that you are able to do everything, God, that you called them to and more. God, so we just praise you for this and just pray for a safe trip home for those that just came to see us tonight. And just, God, we just ask that you be preparing us for what's to come. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.